My name is Candace. I'm a former moderate Republican living in California. I remember the first time I voted. I was 18 in 1972 when I voted for Richard Nixon. I remember the immense feeling of pride I felt to be participating in our country's democracy. I was young, inexperienced politically, but I had been raised as a Republican. I did not necessarily understand why I was a Republican. I just remember being one because my entire family was a Republican. But quite outside my identification with the GOP was a sense at that time that I had done something really important. By voting, I was a viable voice in the ongoing democratic process of our country. I have watched the Republican morph into something I simply cannot morally or ethically support. I have felt betrayed by the party of my youth as they have come to represent a radical version of our country that will see our democracy end. They can call it whatever they want to, but to stop people from voting, to create unreasonable laws, to allow a state legislature to overturn a popular vote is not democracy in action. It is fascist in nature. It is the playbook of Hitler and the Nazis in 1936. Not everyone who lives in the US wants a democracy, but those factions have never been the majority. Whatever the Republican Party wants to call themselves these days, it's not the Republican Party that supports democracy, rule of law, or even facts. They are still singing the song of voter fraud, and Trump thinks he's still going to be back in the White House in August. The craziness never ends. I'm not an expert on voting laws being proposed from one state to the other, and I don't pretend to be. But what I do know is that as a white individual, my rights have never been infringed upon. I've never had to guess how many marbles were in a jar. I've never had to answer questions that not even the person asking them could answer. I can walk through a line of people, blend in without being stopped or harassed or turned away. Out of convenience, I have been voting from home, from the comfort of my own home for years. My right to vote has been a treasured part of my American life. My candidate did not always win, but I never felt our country was in danger when they did not, except when Donald Trump was elected to the presidency. Today, I'm uncertain and fearful for what lies ahead if the devil of all of this is not confronted head on by all rational citizens. We need to keep speaking up. It's my understanding that the election of 2020 was the most successful in the history of our country. Over 67% of the population turned out to vote. It was not a blowout for either side, but Joe Biden won the election fair and square. Donald Trump started his 2016 campaign feeding the voter fraud conspiracy theory, and he's never stopped, and he's still spinning it, even after the insurrection of the Capitol that he fueled with his rhetoric on January 6th. What did the Republican leadership do? Instead of putting together a bipartisan committee to investigate what happened, they've swept it under the rug because they don't want to talk about it. They've decided the Justice Department could investigate it instead. And they passed sweeping legislation to make it harder and more difficult, if not completely impossible, for people of color to vote and people of minimal means. They are acting like a business person who closes down his store to the general public because a few people shoplifted once, only letting in a few select to shop. A democracy does not shut out voters because of some minimal voting discrepancies that have absolutely no impact on the outcome of an election, but it hurts the rest of the country when this happens. And certainly no outside agency should be allowed to audit my vote. That is a violation of my rights. My vote is private. It's between me and the paper that I wrote on, and nobody else needs to see that except the voting machine that's counting my vote. This is a total violation of my civil rights. So we need to keep speaking up. We need to do this tomorrow. We need to do this the next day and the next day after that. Because if we don't do something now, it could be too late. Now is the time to speak up.